This is your daily dose of all things royal.
Well, you just think you know everything, don't you? You're like a black woman in hindsight.
I told you. What did I tell you? Didn't I tell you? 'Cause I told you. And when did I tell you? A long time ago. And what did I say will happen when I told you? Exactly what just happened.
Now Harry's trying to get back home. I truly believe it has everything to do with what their mission was in the first place when they came over here to the United States in 2020, which was to go ahead and help the Biden regime get elected into office, as well as beyond this censorship campaign in order to drive and push regulation, being that they got called out and they didn't see Elon Musk buying Twitter. I think that foiled a lot of what they were planning on doing in clamping down on free speech. Also, Harry is not going to be protected here in the United States if Donald Trump gets into office, right? There's a lot of stuff that these two have done and have been involved with that I believe is catching up with them. Hence the reason why this little coward is running back to the UK, making it look like he misses home so much. He misses his family. Now, I think that after November 5th, should, God willing, Trump get into office, we could predict what's going to happen next. I will guarantee that Harry will not stay in the United States, and we'll start seeing headlines of Harry going back to the UK, spending the holidays, now leaning on the Spencers, or that will be the headline of the day of Harry spending time with his cousins, and we'll see a leaked photo here, a leaked photo there to show that his family on Diana's side has been embracing him and supporting him. And then slowly we'll start seeing that Harry has a meeting with King Charles, and then we'll have the Royal Rota report upon how, it was a tense meeting, but Charles is open to forgiving, even though the path may be long. There is optimism, hope, in the future for Harry to be accepted back into the family. Wait for it, folks. Then we'll start to see Harry being introduced slowly in family events, not, working royal events yet, but just putting him back in family events, like with what they did with Andrew, in allowing Harry to be with the family on Christian holidays. Because, who is going to challenge Harry being with his family for Christmas or Easter? Of course, they're going to use that as a PR moment to show how the family is united and blood is thicker than that trash out in Montecito. Throughout 2025, I have been pointing out to all of you that Prince Harry's PR, as well as the palace PR, appears to be carefully positioning Prince Harry for a potential return to the UK. This effort seems to have gained momentum soon after Donald Trump's election victory, with subtle messaging easing the public into the idea. A notable sign came earlier this year when Harry and Meghan's PR flew to the UK to meet with Tobin, the King's senior communications person. I think a clear indicator that discussions were certainly underway. Meanwhile, Archwell's international philanthropy has been notably quiet following USAID cuts, with little to no visible activity. Yet Prince Harry himself stepped up, making a high-profile visit to Ukraine in September to support wounded troops and veterans, aligning closely with UK government priorities on the conflict. Now, I have maintained since 2021 that Harry never truly severed ties with the institution. His continued representation of UK interests on the global stage, often in a quasi-official royal capacity, explains the special security arrangements and visa considerations he receives in the United States. This would be highly unusual for a private citizen, and I think many of you agree here with me on this one. Look, we all know that the royal reporters who pushed these narratives since 2020 have been a part of this controlled messaging. They rely on the palace to give guidance, as well as Harry and Meghan, on what they can and cannot say. With recent developments in the Trump administration, including pulling back funding from NATO as well as Ukraine aid, combined with a pause on the tech agreement that we have with the UK because of the regulation of speech that challenges the First Amendment, there is this level of tension that's going on between two countries that are supposed to be allies. Now, against this backdrop, I believe a carefully planned extraction or reintegration strategy has been put into motion. We're already seeing this noticeable shift in the media tone towards Harry, building him up as this humanitarian and all he knows is a life of service, as well as Brits being favorable to welcoming him back. I mean, it's complete propaganda, but just notice that you're seeing it more. Now, the reason why I'm bringing up this news is not because it's making news around the world and it's a trending topic, but if you've been following me for a while now, you know that I've talked extensively about this agency and what it actually is being used for. This agency serves more as a tool for foreign influence operations rather than genuine humanitarian aid. U.S. aid, as having overreached its mandate, engaging in political influence, capacity building for U.S. interests, and censorship, particularly involvement in internet content moderation and influencing foreign elections. This is the vehicle the Chia uses to fund these regime changes and color revolutions. USAID's foreign influence includes developing activist organizations in countries to align with U.S. policy goals, effectively acting as a central hub for coordinating covert activities. This is what Harry and Meghan have been a part of and have been doing. Under the Biden regime, Colombia and Nigeria were two strategic countries that the U.S. had pumped billions of dollars into in order to further it's not even U.S. interests, but more of the globalist interests, such as these extremely destructive SDG goals. I've talked about this before. At the end of the day, the ultimate goal for these people is this cognitive security, being able to control the masses. And we all know that the biggest obstacle to doing this is not being able to control the information flow on what people see, as well as what people can say. So now when you go back and you revisit the Nigeria trip as well as the Colombia trip, the activities they were participating in were a part of these covert activities the U.S. strategically carries out in these countries. The money to fund it came from the United States taxpayer. And this is the scam that these NGOs are running to launder American taxpayer money. Let's revisit what was being said at the time when Harry and Meghan were going to Colombia. This is what I had to say back a couple months ago. And this article from The Telegraph comes out with the headline, Harry and Meghan tour being used as a distraction from Colombia's problems, residents claim. It says the pair are being used as political pawns by left-wing government, which has been mirrored in corruption scandals. Could it be that this is propaganda designed to throw the public off as a result of Meghan and Harry actually being tied to the source of this corruption? So I would imagine that somewhere along the line, the Chia is involved with this unrest, as they are with many other places where they want to destabilize. So as Mike Ben says here, NATO Covert Action Club, the US, UK, Brussels, is using U.S. taxpayer money from USAID. Remember, I've done a video on showing you where money could be coming to fund the Harkles to get the countries most politically captured by the Atlanticist foreign policy establishment to all adopt digital ID tied to bank accounts. This is happening currently, guys. And this is a directive coming from the World Economic Forum being pushed by the United Nations. So this digital ID that's anchored to your bank account has been rolled out in these conflict zones where you see NATO touching them, from Ukraine to Estonia. You have Colombia, which apparently is the CIA's beachhead in South America, and Zanzibar. So the CIA is actually funding this through our foreign policy arm, which is USAID, and giving it to these programs. And what is the end state? The end state is to make this successful in order to then force it on the Western world, like the United States and the UK. So this is supposed to be all in line with SDG goal number 1. The problem here with these UN authoritarian visions that they have in this global digital compact is that they want to achieve connecting everything from people to devices, entities, and tied up in this one centrally administered location. Now, I don't know about you, I don't feel too comfortable with these people having that type of control, seeing their track record. You know what I mean? So what does Meghan and Harry have to do with it? Well, this is just all speculation, but this whole platform that they're gunning on surrounding censorship and protecting the kids and online harm has to do with the programs that are being run from this digital ID rollout in Colombia. So, Luminate is a global foundation that works on impacting and changing society, particularly affecting global policy as well as United States policy. So, while they say that they're trying to give voices to the underrepresented, it's all bullshit. Luminate is part of the Omidar Group. The Omidar Group is a part of the censorship industrial complex. Pierre and Pam Omidar have tremendous influence in our elections as they are one of the globalists who does have that kind of power. So no shocker that they are here supporting Meghan and Harry because they are a part of this responsible youth power tech fund, whatever brainwashing initiative that they're, funding. You see, the big problem that we have with Meghan and Harry is that they have this system that is behind them and supporting all of these lies. So when you see Maria Ressa and Renee DiResta, and we see the whole censorship complex embrace them and allow them to pull off stunts like this, then you realize what you're up against. So Meghan is going to continue to keep doubling down on the narratives that she has put out there that were highly inflammatory. She's also never going to denounce the squad because the squad is very much a part of this engine. Now that the funding for USAID has been cut off, it will be interesting to see how these foundations move forward. Will they now start going at the state level to siphon money from the taxpayer? My guess is that's probably what's going to happen. I'm pretty sure Gavin Newsom will throw Harry and Meghan a couple bones, especially if he has an election coming up and he needs some type of celebrity endorsement. In my opinion, I don't see Archewell Fugazi Public Charity lasting for that much longer, especially since the majority of their work is pertaining to censorship and funding censorship initiatives. Now, I'm pretty sure there are many of you out there who feel the same way that I do now. Anytime we see the mainstream media report on anything about Harry and Meghan, we know not to trust it. And this trip to Angola to improve Harry's brand as the humanitarian and committed to his life of service is no different. Now, I'm very much aware that there are many of you out there that still feel and are adamant that Harry and Meghan have absolutely no connection to the institution. It's perfectly fine if you want to buy into the mainstream media and what you're being fed to believe. But people like myself, I do think a lot, and I like to apply common sense to a lot of things that are not spoken and, should not be ignored. And this situation is no different. And when I say that I don't believe that Harry ever left the institution, I truly do believe that. And I'm here to show you in this video another example that you can add to the long list of examples of why. Now, it's my belief that Harry is here in the United States with special status. Now, of course, Meghan doesn't have that coverage because she's an American, but Harry's passport is diplomat status. I don't think it was ever revoked or taken away. And I just want to point out that Harry's passport status is separate from Harry's security situation. He can still have this special status as he's traveling about around the world and getting other governments to pay for his security. But when he's home domestically, that's where Harry wants to get his security back. Notice he's not complaining about getting protection everywhere that he goes. Like he went to Ukraine, he was in Nigeria, Colombia. He travels to New York here, and we're giving him taxpayer-funded security. Harry has a status. It's Meghan that doesn't have any kind of status. And I do believe a lot of this fight is for Meghan. Now I'm going to tell you this. This is my opinion from what I'm reading and reading in between the lines. This trip is smoke and mirrors. Yes, Harry's there to be the humanitarian for his PR, but he's also there on behalf of the UK government, and I'll tell you why. Now, I just want to point out that whenever you hear public and private partnerships, the phrase that the World Economic Forum, Charles's little club that he hangs out with, ever says that, know that that's a characteristic of fascism. Fascism involves a system where private businesses exist but are heavily directed by the state to align with national goals. And that is no different with what's going on with the Halo Trust. And let me show you what I mean by that. You see, the Halo Trust is not some NGO that is like 5 organizations removed directly interacting with the government. No, the Halo Trust is directly intertwined with His Majesty the King's government. You could almost look at it as an engine to further British foreign policy, taking on very similar characteristics to USAID. Now, I stumbled upon this document, which was submitted to Parliament, of which the subject line is, "This underlines the importance of the review enabling closer integration of human assistance, economic development plans, and stabilization programming between the UK government and the Halo Trust and their work." Now, in this document that was submitted by the Halo Trust to the Foreign Affairs Committee under the late Queen's government, they mention many times over of the tight alignment and partnership with the UK government over the past 32 years. And throughout this document, pushing a global Britain that is both influential and a force for good in the world. Now, doesn't that sound like a position that USAID would be taking, especially when Halo is recommending the primary purpose of the integrated review should be to equip a global Britain with capability and influence to respond to complex global challenges over the next 3 to 5 years? And here we have Harry meeting with the president. Now, many are saying, oh, he had hijacked this visit because it really wasn't his visit. No, this was his visit, and he was going there on behalf of the UK government, representing the UK government to help with foreign policy. And I'll tell you why in a second. Just stay with me. So here is Harry with the Halo Trust acting on behalf of this organization as the front, but really representing the king. This organization is tightly aligned with the government. Again, Harry is there on behalf of the king. You don't believe me? Well, Harry is telling us right here on the Sussex.com website. In the little write-up for this PR stunt, it says at the bottom, a message of gratitude and hope. At receptions hosted by the British Embassy and Angolan ministers, the Duke acknowledged the critical need of support from international donors, including the UK, US, and private sector partners. And I'm sorry, but the United States needs to stay far away from Harry and this organization. And I'll show you why in a second. He emphasized the critical role played by local Halo staff, many of whom are clearing the very communities they call home. Oh, I'm going to get to the net of it. Again, way down at the bottom, the real reason for why Harry was there. And it's only this paragraph that really tells you what Harry was there for. It says, the Duke met with President Lorenzo in Luanda yesterday, Tuesday, 15th of July, to welcome the Angolan government's renewed commitment to landmine clearance, including a new 3-year contract with the Halo Trust. Later that day, the Duke joined leaders from the business and diplomatic communities at a reception hosted by the British Embassy, where he highlighted the value of long-term international partnerships in achieving humanitarian goals. Oh, so noble of you, Harry. Doing just what Papa Chuck needs you to do as a working royal. Doing exactly what your Uncle Andrew used to do. Is nobody connecting 2 and 2 together yet? When you see British Embassy putting on this whole show, and Harry as patron of an NGO that's tightly intertwined with his father's government, then add the British Embassy in conjunction with the Angolan government, come on. Put two and two together, folks. Use your common sense. Now, the role of the British Embassy in this situation was not only to facilitate this gathering of diplomats and stakeholders, but also to give local introductions, security coordination with Angolan authorities, and bridge the relationships between all the various entities together. Because guess what? Harry was there to further foreign policy. Anyone have an idea as to what happened less than 2 months ago? The UK held the first UK-Angola Trade and Investment Mission in Angola, organized by the Department for Business and Trade with the British Embassy in Luanda, the same place that Harry was visiting, okay? Over 30 UK companies joined meetings with Angolan officials in sectors like infrastructure, agriculture, tourism, transport, and finance. The Halo Trust plays a critical role in this because in order to see this economic growth and boom in the respective sectors, they got to get rid of the rest of those landmines. Hence the reason why there's such a press now to get this done by the end of 2025. You see, the Halo Trust's work in demining has now suddenly become a core and central element in all of the discussions around economic recovery, agriculture, infrastructure, and tourism as a result of this bilateral trade agreement that is in place with the UK. With billions flowing and billions more to be flowing, they need to clear those mines in order for them to achieve that. And that's why now we're seeing sudden interest with Harry going over there, trying to be this humanitarian. Not because he gives a shit about these kids. I mean, the last time he was there was in 2019 for a photo op. He's back again, not because he wants to retrace his mother's footsteps. No, this is to help the UK to find money in order to fund removing the rest of these landmines, because the United States has been funding historically a lot of it. Who let this guy have a microphone? I'll tell you who that is. It's the UK government, backed by the Crown. Did you guys know that the UK has a policy called the Soft Power Council? Yes, that was created last year in early 2025 to specifically use the royals to boost UK influence. This is not a theory, guys. This is a confirmed policy. So now it makes sense as to why Harry keeps popping up in Ukraine. This is the soft power influence that they're trying to leverage. And it's in this policy specifically laid out how they use soft power. The UK Soft Power Council is a new body aimed at expanding Britain's global influence, leveraging assets, including the royal family, to support diplomatic objectives in a volatile world, including backing for Ukraine. Senior Labour Minister Lisa Nandy, formerly Republican, cited the council's work and the royal family's role in global influence as reasons for changing her mind on supporting the monarchy. I find this beyond gross now, because what this body is set up to do is to ensure that soft power is being leveraged so the UK can have whatever advantage. When you look at the situation with Donald Trump and having that second state visit, that wasn't because the royal family values Donald Trump or even America. It's because this body told the royal family they had to do it. Not because they wanted to, but because Labour Party is in a shit position. It says here from the report, the monarchy could be a powerful tool in improving relations with United States President Donald Trump, who is particularly fond of the royal family and King Charles III. And this is the part that I find gross. You're referring to the royal family as a tool to manipulate our president. What do I think is coming next? Well, as I said before, expect more pieces painting Harry as troubled but trying to redeem himself and extend all these olive branches. Expect more reports of secret meetings with Charles's staff and maybe even potentially setting up for holidays with the family and bringing little Betty and Archie over. For those having trouble deciding what to do in November, let's just put it in this perspective. A vote for Biden is a vote for supporting more American taxpayer money going to Meghan and Harry. It's also supporting the destruction of America and this radical Marxist agenda that Meghan and Harry are a part of. And whether or not you want to accept or admit it, just know that if you're an American, your taxpayer dollars are going into their pockets. Come on now. Does anyone really believe that she supports Afghan women resettling here in the United States? Meghan doesn't do anything unless she is paid. And quite frankly, her track record of how she treats women in the past is not a shining example of why she should be a pillar of championing anything for feminism, aside from using men to get ahead. Now, I have talked about Mina's List before in a prior video, explaining the organization is backed by former Obama administration members as well as people who had worked for the UN. So, just a quick recap. For those that don't know, Mina's List is a nonprofit organization which works to provide resources, support, tools, and training to empower women political leaders and women human rights defenders in government and civil society. So, another one of these social justice warrior organizations that really is destroying the fabric of the United States. Aside from taking taxpayer money and using it to lobby to Congress, they are supposedly advocating for and with them, whether they are displaced by conflict or in their home countries. Now, fast forward to this press release that Mina's List had published about Archwell. Help me understand, what is it that they did here that has meaningful impact? Because a lot of this word salad that's put up here, when you boil it down, means absolutely nothing. Before we get into this press release by Mina's List, I want to show you how Meghan made money off of this. So, to begin with, the United States has budgeted and has given in federal money, meaning my tax dollars, $20 billion to welcome not only these migrants that have been invading our country, but also during the time of the Afghan evacuation. Every year since 2021, the Office of Refugee Resettlement has been siphoning taxpayer money and awarding contracts to this select group of religious organizations. From Christian groups to Jewish groups, they have been doled out billions of dollars over the last couple of years to resettle these illegal migrants as well as refugees coming from Afghanistan, giving them all the bells and whistles that even some Americans do not have today. And thanks to Won't Yield, they were able to capture this tweet, in which was swiftly pulled down. Now, at the time, people were like, oh, Meghan's getting back into politics, and none of it made sense. Well, I think the reason why they pulled it down was because it doesn't align with the Welcome Corps messaging. Welcome Corps messaging really is governmental money that is being allocated by the Department of State to be allocated to various programs that help Afghans or refugees resettle. And here we have Mina's List coming up out of nowhere, to which Meghan is supporting this political activist group. And I understand why they pulled it down, because it would have drawn a lot of bad attention. So they pulled it down, and it hadn't been talked about again until now, which we see Archwell in this positioning of, oh yeah, we want these refugees to have a sense of community and a sense of purpose. I think they let the cat out of the bag when they dropped this tweet and then had to pull it down because, yeah, it really exposed them. But we'll get to that in a second. I just want to point that out, that this was when we first heard about Mina's List. And that was back in September of 2023. But it just so happened that year, the Department of State had launched this program called the Welcome Corps, which was beginning the private sponsorship of these refugees, which meant that there was money being allocated. So where was that money going towards? Well, it was going into these various resettlement agencies that were given hundreds of millions of dollars in contracts of taxpayer money. So take, for example, HIAS, which is the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. And I raise this because it's one of the bigger resettlement agencies in which they have received quite a lot of money from the government. And, it doesn't hurt that Mayorkas, the guy that we just impeached from the head of DHS, holding back Harry's visa information, was a board member of this organization. So Here we have an organization that is receiving millions of dollars and then taking a cut for themselves and then shelling out to these various organizations, private sponsorship organizations, to then help facilitate getting these people resettled. What's interesting is that this highest, I believe I had shown you this in the border migration crisis video that I did, showing you that Meghan and Harry had gave money to this organization. So now when you start to think about how this dirty world of philanthrocapitalism works and stealing American taxpayer money, you start to connect the dots and realize what is going on here. So we don't know if this money actually went to help Ukraine refugees. For all we know, this was an unrestricted grant to which Highest could use it for whatever they see fit, such as paying salaries, giving bonuses, operational costs, travel costs, even maybe paying consultants. Somebody made off with $50,000. And what I suspect is part of the grift is that Meghan and Harry knew that this organization has been awarded X amount of dollars in government funding. And knowing about this program in which these organizations give out our money, no doubt somehow Meghan and Harry got their hands on some of that money in order to then pretend that they're helping to resettle Afghans. Hence the reason why we see this BS with Mina's list. You know, I can honestly play this out and say, as an example, this is just speculation. Maybe Meghan and Harry gave this $50,000 to whoever because this stuff is corrupt to the core, especially since Mayorkas was a board member of this. And right now, what is going on is absolute treason. We see that the system is corrupt. So what could have possibly happened? Well, maybe in order to be considered for some of this American taxpayer money, $50,000 was the entrance fee to which somebody pocketed. And now Meghan and Harry are getting a check cut for like $250,000 of American taxpayer money, of which maybe 50,000 went to Mina's list, and Meghan saying, oh, you know what? We're going to do a photo shoot to show how caring I am. But folks, that's worth more than 200,000 because I am a duchess. And then that's it. Meanwhile, Meghan and Harry pocket $200,000, and we'll never know whether or not it was given by any of these organizations and somehow shifted over to an offshore account, and off into the sunset we go. This is how the system works. This is how corrupt and what a sham all of this that's happening here, and taking advantage of this pain and suffering and putting people through this in order to squeeze the taxpayer is nothing but greed and selfishness. And then on top of it, you have Meghan contributing and supporting an organization. Does concern me because when you strip away the sugary language and the glossy photo shoot, you realize that this Marxist manipulation really is there to undermine society. We're going to go through this press release that Mina's listed. So just to catch everybody up to speed here, there are about 18 bills that are trying to get crammed through this Congress focused on censorship under the guise of protecting kids and online safety with age verification, as well as, algorithm control. I mean, the full gamut covering exactly what the DSA and Online Safety Act do. And this is all being pushed by these NGOs, especially the NGO that Harry and Meghan work with called Five Rights Foundation, Baroness Beban Kidron, who is working to get the COSA bill passed through. But in any case, Eric Schmidt is trying to write legislation that gives Americans protection in order to fight back. In my opinion, this so-called impact report from Archwell Foundation, now sneakily flipped to Archwell Philanthropies, in what looks like a desperate dodge to fool the IRS as well as the U.S. government. Like every other Fugazi report, it's nothing but a glossy pile of self-congratulatory bullshit packed with feel-good fluff, but hiding the real dirt on their shady political games and censorship pushes. To me, bragging about their fifth year with all of this showing up and doing good nonsense feels like a total smokescreen for what they're really up to, which is funneling donor cash into radical leftist agendas. meddling in U.S. politics, and eroding our First Amendment rights under the guise of online safety and fighting misinformation. As I've discussed in previous videos about the resurgence of foreign influence censorship efforts, it's becoming clear once again, just as I've highlighted before, that Harry and Meghan, along with others in this ecosystem, have shifted their focus. They're now prioritizing pressure from new legislation framed as child safety, while pushing for greater control over AI algorithms, access to user data, including your children's, and the content people get to see online. The seemingly harmless, heart-tugging campaigns from Archwell are pure deceptive marketing. Please, don't be fooled by these manipulative tactics. Harry and Meghan recently announced they're transitioning to a fiscal sponsorship model for their so-called Fugazi Foundation, now rebranded as Archwell Philanthropies. This is essentially a continuation of what they've already been doing, which is serving as a conduit to funnel money towards progressive causes aligned with globalist agendas like the UN Agenda 2030. It is conceivable that this structure could open doors to funding from foreign entities, such as the UK government, the UN, or the World Health Organization, allowing them to support U.S.-based groups that undermine American sovereignty. With the Trump administration cracking down on questionable nonprofit funding flows and the potential money laundering schemes via taxpayer dollars, many of these foundations are now redirecting resources more discreetly. Archwell appears to be following suit in order to stay under the radar, and that's exactly what we've witnessed this year. But mark my words, Meghan Markle will most definitely resurface rearing her ugly-looking head prominently in 2026, aggressively promoting child online safety initiatives to ram through restrictive laws, just in time for the midterms. If you haven't picked up on it yet, the Democrats, as well as the leftists overseas, are recycling the very same playbook that they used in 2018. We must raise awareness and make a lot of noise about it because the left is relentlessly working to enact these regulatory controls in the United States. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't deny that real harms exist online, but it's hypocritical for the very people causing or exacerbating much of that harm to lead the charge on solutions. Harry and Meghan are particularly poor spokespeople for this exact cause. I mean, they've contributed significantly to the online toxicity themselves while trampling on Americans' First Amendment rights, like my own.
This is what I like to call my told you so dance. I told you so, 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 I told you so. You're such a fraud.